I'm traveling a lot, and when you travel, you got to protect your data. You got to protect your privacy online. NordVPN.com/Fightful allows me to do that, allows me to browse safely and securely. When you go to an airport, when you go to an arena, a restaurant, a hotel, you're usually connecting to that unsecured Wi-Fi, which leaves you susceptible to having your data stolen, any number of things taken from your private connection, or what should be your private connection. NordVPN.com/Fightful makes it a private connection with the fastest VPN in the world, a 30-day money-back guarantee, and a ton of other features in addition to that peace of mind that you get when you can browse safely and securely. And I'm talking all your devices: Surface Pro, laptop, desktop, PC, smart TV, router, phone, whatever you're taking with you. NordVPN.com/Fightful will add extra layers of security to your digital life. You can get a password manager, a file encryption tool. Be safe, be smart. NordVPN.com/Fightful. What's up, you guys? Welcome to Fightful, here with a name you know. You know him from Dark Side of the Ring, Tales from the Territory, and now Who Killed WCW starts 10 p.m. June 4th on Vice. I had a look at the first episode, and man, was it fantastic. We've got Evan Husney. How are you doing, man?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Finally, we meet digitally, but we meet and are talking for the first time, so thank you.
Indeed, and man, I mentioned this right off the top. I got a look at that first episode, and it was unlike any other WCW documentary that I had seen. And I know there were some people online that are like, oh, another one? Is this beating a dead horse? No, it is not beating a dead horse, because all the documentaries that you have seen prior were WWE. They were on the network or DVDs or whatever. And anybody that can see my little DVD rack back there knows that I've got plenty of those. I'm well studied on that. But what led to you covering this topic that many claim had been covered ad nauseum, but if you ain't read the Nitro book or seen this documentary, it really hasn't.
Yeah, man, there's so much that led to this. I'll try to be brief. First off, I grew up as a huge WCW fan. I was more of a WCW fan as a kid than I was WWF at the time. I grew up in Minneapolis. Nitro came through a lot, and I went to all the Nitros that came through. Huge fan. Played all the N64 games to death. So it holds a very special place in my heart. That's number one. Number two is anytime we were doing a new season of Dark Side of the Ring, we were putting it out on social media. What do you guys want to see for the next season? And 9 times out of 10, we would get responses from people to cover the death of WCW. That was an often requested thing. And we had looked into it many times in previous seasons and just couldn't wrap our heads around how we would do it. In 1 or 2 episodes, it just didn't quite fit, and we couldn't make it work. And we were developing a podcast. We still might do it. We were going to do a Dark Side of the Ring kind of spin-off podcast that would cover stories that are almost too big for the show. Yeah. And we thought maybe we could do it the final years of WCW as a subject. And it started, we just got so excited with this idea that we're like, wait, maybe this could be its own series, for television. And then, we'd done Tales from the Territories with $7, Dwayne Johnson's production company, and Vice wanted to continue that collaboration. And so just kind of these two perfect things, like, well, what about this? Would you guys be interested in doing this doc about the sort of the last years of WCW? And $7 was all on board, Vice was all on board, and then we were off to the races. And we only started filming it in December, so it's a very quick turnaround. Yeah.
So you had mentioned the $7 connection, but at what point do you find out, oh, The Rock's going to be involved in this? He's going to be interviewed. Because I mean, that is such a huge point of this, because obviously when you think WCW, you don't think of The Rock, but obviously if you can get The Rock featured on something like this, you're not going to say no to that.
Exactly. Yeah, it was nothing we really planned on per se in terms of having The Rock sit down for an interview. But it just, as we started sending him cuts of the episodes, he was so enthusiastic about them. and he loved that first episode, and he was like, I want to sit down for this. We're like, awesome.
Love it.
And it actually worked out more so in a practical way, because there were most of the people we interviewed for this, had lived through the demise of WCW. And that was the whole point of this, by the way. The whole point was to not go the WWE framework, because, victors rewrite history, and we didn't want to go down that path. It doesn't really get into it touches on it, but it doesn't really get into how, the WWE, fought back in the Monday Night Wars and stuff. It touches on that briefly. So it doesn't get into the DX invasion and all that stuff. But anyway, we needed somebody to speak enthusiastically about the good days of WCW.
Sure.
And nobody involved with WCW these days, is going to speak enthusiastically about it. They're all kind of dejected, So we needed a hype man. We needed somebody to put all this over and to talk about when it was good, how great it was. And there's nobody better than The Rock to really do that. And he also did touch on what his perspective was from the other side, seeing how when WCW was kicking their ass, like, whoa, we need to be inspired by this, and we need to, go in that, more in that direction. So I think it all worked out.
Oft forgotten, The Rock is a 2-time WCW champion.
That's
based
right.
on
That's
when
right.
they brought the title over to WWE as well.
That's right.
I just love that The Rock is involved there. And I mean, you've got active WWE names or contingent names as well, which is not something that you saw in Dark Side of the Ring. In fact, some very integral names that you would see in early seasons when they went back to WWE. You might see them, but it would be archived footage or something like that. How was that? Like, I'm not sure of your personal relationship with WWE, if they are okay with you, despise you, if they deal with you. I can tell you, I've personally been up and down that roller coaster in my days too. So how was that for you, getting the ability, clearing that, or did you even need to with some of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. It was super awesome to be able to work with folks like Booker T, comes to mind as somebody we've always wanted on the show. And going back to the Tales from the Territories collaboration, working with The Rock and $7 helped to open those doors that were previously not open for us on Dark Side of the Ring. Like on Territories, we got, Jerry Lawler, we got Jimmy Hart, who his status had changed since earlier seasons of Dark Side. And that was great for it. Oh, we got Michael Hayes on Territories, something we've always wanted you've always wanted him on Dark Side. So those collaborations have helped us kind of bridge that gap. And this was the same, in terms of getting, folks like Booker T involved who, by other means probably wouldn't be able to participate in a Dark Side episode. So love that for this. Love that collaboration in order to be able to speak to more people and, to widen that net for sure.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from WWE, whether it be this or Tales or Dark Side of the Ring? Because obviously there's some stuff covered that they ain't thrilled about.
Sure. Well, I don't want to name specific names, but over the years, you meet people from WWE all the way down from, camera people working in, the social media departments, marketing departments, or you meet wrestlers themselves, and they often admit I have to take my WWE hat off when I watch your show, but everybody's watching it, and so it's cool. I think that there are times, when things have gotten heated in terms of some of the things we've covered on the show, of course, but I think for the most part, we have a pretty good relationship. I don't know if it would ever turn into an official relationship in terms of getting, approval on talent and things like that for Dark Side, but for the most part, we know everyone's watching, and for the most part, people dig what we do.
So in sort of preparing for the production of this, are you watching the WWE versus WCW documentary they did on the network, or the original one, or anything like that, to figure out ways to differentiate yourselves, or to say, well, that didn't quite happen the way that they claimed?
That's funny. I had seen those when they came out, for sure. I remember them, the Monday Night Wars, the Rise and Fall of WCW, but I kind of purposely didn't revisit them going into this. One of the main things that I did go through was Guy Evans' book Nitro.
Oh, incredible!
Yeah, which I'll show here. And it was sort of like we knew that was going to be a big source of inspiration for us because a lot of new information came out of this. It was the kind of definitive what happened within the company without sort of the WWE noise around it. Here's what really happened, and Guy Evans did a tremendous job speaking to a lot of Turner executives that had never spoken on the record before about WCW. And that was something that was really inspiring to me. I was like, I want this to also feature people who were on the Turner Broadcasting side, who didn't have the wrestling fandom stake in this that everybody else had, from within the WCW. So Nitro was a huge source of inspiration. I read it cover to cover. And then we approached Guy Evans. We're like, hey, we love the book. We'd love for you to be a part of the project and to be sort of that voice that breaks things down for us in a very, objective way. Because, sometimes when you have more of the traditional wrestling newsletter, voices, they've lived through this and they're sort of part of the story too. So I thought it would be cool to kind of widen the net and to bring somebody in like
jaded by the content they were subjected to at the time too. Like
totally,
there's nothing wrong with that because listen, they had to live through and cover a lot of this stuff, and in many ways, their livelihood was directly affected by some of the terrible content that they were subjected to.
Oh yeah, especially at the end in the last year and a half for sure. But that was a huge prep for this was Nitro and talking to people and mapping out just how many, we only had so many interview subjects we could, so many shooting days, so many subjects, so many travel days. So we had to kind of make it all work as a puzzle piece for 4 episodes. It's a 4-episode series. And how best can we hit all these marks? Because we wanted to, of course, be able to tell the rise of WCW, with NWO and it becoming this cultural phenomenon, the number one wrestling company in the world at that time. But we also really wanted to be able to spend time in the later episodes about the sale and about how these different figures at Turner Broadcasting and AOL, sort of shadowy figures, came in and pulled some, nefarious strings that also led to the company's downfall. Stuff that's really not been talked about. A lot of controversies surrounding the sale to WWE that's never been touched on before in any sort of documentary. So there's a lot of new stuff here. For the most jaded WCW doc watcher, there's a lot of new stuff, I promise.
I feel like there is no better example of how to appropriately cover something that you weren't actively involved in, especially in wrestling, than Guy Evans' book. Like he approached it from I have an interest in this, but I don't truly know what happened type of way. And I think that's the best way. That man listened a lot. He interviewed everybody he could possibly interview. And I mean, you have a lot of people, especially who read the book. I know Eric Bischoff was a big proponent of it because he was like, Eric Bischoff was like, this is what I've been trying to tell you guys for a very, very long time, is this specifically. And I was so happy when I saw that Guy Evans was involved in it, because the work that had to go into that. I remember getting early inquiries regarding that maybe about a year before the book came out. And I was like, really? He talked to this many people? Is this a real thing? It was so many people that I was like, is this what is it? And then it emerges and it is as good as we expected. A longtime dream interview of mine was Ted Turner. Obviously no longer a possibility. However, you all spoke to the man's son, which, I mean, what a coup.
Yeah, we explored the possibility of being able to interview Ted Turner himself. And his son even tried for us and said that it even might have been possible still.
Okay.
He does have health challenges, so it's from what I've heard. I don't know what's exactly going on. So we were very excited at the possibility of that, but we wanted to get somebody from Ted's perspective, or because it is very important, because I mean, it is sort of his baby at the end of the day. Eric Bischoff is a huge part of it, making it successful, but it was kept around for so long and sort of insulated and protected because of Ted Turner, and he sort of is the foil to Vince McMahon in a lot of ways during that time. So it was important we get someone who could speak to that, because I think he is sort of an underrepresented voice or figure in this story, and he's a huge part of it, and so we had to definitely make sure we covered that. So his son, who was super cool, great guy. I think he comes off great in the show, and he was super helpful. It was awesome to work with him.
I mean, yeah, that's part of the reason why I find it so interesting, because we have not, since the demise of WCW, really heard from anybody directly connected with him on video form or anything like that. I know Conrad has done a good job talking to a lot of people that had been involved in production aspects and things like that. But for Ted Turner, like, the big question for many people was, how much did he really care? Was he keeping this running out of spite, out of love, out of whatever? So to hear somebody not just directly connected to him, but related to him, that experienced it and lived it, I think was just a masterful get.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. And I think it shows, like, wrestling was a huge part of building that empire, and showing that this was almost guaranteed loyal programming too. And Ted saw that, and obviously, the sort of culture around it would change, but that's how you can see how, why Ted protected it for so long, or felt that there was value to it for so long.
Was there anybody that you guys spoke to that maybe surprised you with how they, I don't want to say performed on camera, but they were on camera? Because with some of these people, it might be a situation where they're like, okay, don't really want to talk about this again. Or there's some people that, just they're able to carry this camera presence, and it translates really well to telling this story.
Well, Kevin Nash comes to mind.
Oh, man.
Again, yeah, who I think is going to wind up being the star of the show by the end of it. But he is someone we've never worked with before. Again, also has ties to WWE, and we've never had him on Dark Side. I don't think we've ever even really asked. We had never had the right opportunity. But he was amazing to work with. His his tone, his irreverence, his sense of humor, the way he sort of speaks. It's not like direct storytelling, walking you through every beat, but it's kind of the perfect, color commentary, if you will, on all this stuff. The perfect, punctuation mark on a lot of these stories. And he's so funny. He constantly cracked us up, and it was cool to hear from him. And what was important to him with this series was that it was, because I don't think he would have cared otherwise, is that it was finally, let's tell this story from the perspective of the people, solely, minus The Rock, who were in WCW. This is our story, and he wanted to own that, and had a lot to say about it. And it was awesome to work with him on it.
How did it feel for you to see the Dark Side series expand so much, like 90s, 2000s football, comedy, like all those things? Like, I keep our Samsung TV on the Vice channel, like, throughout the day. Like, so I'll see stuff like this just pop up here and there. How did you feel to see it expand like that?
It's been crazy. Like, when we started out, all we had ever thought for this series, it was just going to be this standalone documentary on, the death of Bruiser Brody. That was all we had ever anticipated or hoped for at that time, was just to make an hour-long documentary for television on Bruiser Brody. And then it slowly just became, turning it into a series and developing it into, like, all these different stories, and then building it out, getting a season 1 green light, and then going to season 2, where I think the show really took off, and then just seeing it sort of become almost like the Dark Side channel, on Vice is crazy. And I had been working with Vice since 2013, so it's been a long ride for me, and it's just cool. It's really cool to see the show being embraced, and it to be taking on new forms. We're totally in support of it, and it's just been cool. It's been cool to see, for sure.
So when you have a project like Who Killed WCW, is Vice immediately like, hell yeah? Or is it one of those things where you got to pitch them on it a little bit? How does that process work for you? Because as you mentioned, you have worked with Vice for a long time. Yeah. They understand what content, especially of yours, gets attention. But I'm really interested to see how that works out.
Yeah, well, it was it was still a little bit of a process, because it is unique in that it's a 4-part series. It's not something that typically happens for broadcast television, that sort of format. And it's boring to some maybe, but it's like when you have 10 episodes of something, it's easier to spread the costs of a show around, and you can make it more sort of economic in that way. With 4 episodes, you're compressing a lot of costs, and it can be a little difficult. So it was challenging trying to get this down to the price that made sense for them to do. And pitching it, I think the first reaction was, well, you guys have covered a lot of this on Dark Side before. And we had just done the Bash at the Beach 2000 episode for Dark Side of the Ring, which I sort of look at as almost a pilot for this show, for Who Killed WCW. Yeah. And what was clear to me, seeing the reaction to Bash at the Beach 2000, that episode, was there was a lot of interest, a lot more interest in a lot of the other stories we were telling that season. And people were really interested to relive that time period, to see the vitriol between, all the characters involved. And there's still a lot of speculation and a lot of, there's a lot of engagement around WCW and a lot of course, nostalgia for it. So that was what spoke volumes to me, and was sort of something that I showed them as well, too. It's like, yeah, this is going to be part of the story we're going to have to sort of retell again, yes, but you can just see the engagement on this subject is still so strong, and people have so much reverence for that time period, too, and myself included. And so that was sort of the process of showing how it's going to break down. At first, we didn't know what it was going to be. Was it going to be a standalone film? Was it like a 2-hour movie? Was it going to be a 10-part thing? I think at the end of the day, we probably could have made it a little longer. But I think
I can't tell you how many times I've watched documentaries, though, especially in recent years, where I go, that could have been 2 episodes shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, same. So I think 4 is a good compromise. We definitely packed a lot in. It's very compressed. But I think what's really going to be cool for people to see, I'm very excited about people seeing last episode. Episode 4 is very interesting because it gets into, I feel like, a lot of uncharted territory. And one of the really cool things that we got as far as like never before seen footage, which is utilized in episode 1 and also mostly in episode 4, is we found through Neil Pruitt, who is one of the brilliant minds in he's responsible for the NWO promos. He was doing a lot of the feature, production that they had at WCW at the time. Great guy. He turned us on to this guy who was sitting on now for over 20 years. He's been sitting on never before released 3 days worth of documentary footage chronicling the last days of Nitro. So literally in Panama City, the lead up to the last episode of Nitro. So we got all this footage that no one's ever seen before, like Shane McMahon standing in the middle of the ring, during the day, Bruce Pritchard coming in, Gerald Briscoe coming into the, to the Nitro set, everybody looking dejected, not knowing what's going to happen, interviews with Canyon and, Hugh Morris, people talking about, I don't know what's going to happen. No one's told us what's going on. And it's a really cool.
Wasn't WWE documentary footage. This was just documentary footage in general. My God.
Yeah, I believe he was a cameraman that had worked for WCW, and he decided to just roll on stuff and was filming it. And it was amazing. Just 3 days worth of stuff we had to go through, but it was so cool to go through all of it because what a time capsule, of that time and that moment of the last Nitro. So fans will be really excited about that. That's one of the main cool things I think about this, is seeing that stuff for the first time.
I did an interview with Jimmy Hart a couple of years ago, and he's like, I don't know how many times I've told people in WWE this, but I'm pretty sure Warner still owns 100+ unreleased WCW songs. He's like, they're just sitting in a library somewhere, and nobody knows about it, and nobody seems to be after them. I hit up Mikey Ruckus, and I was like, you might want to look into this, buddy.
I think that's right. I think that is right, because in the show, and we used it in the trailer as well, we did a cover of the NWO theme song.
I heard that.
with our composer, and I think we did it with that, doing the publishing deal with, I believe it was Warner or one of their subsidiaries. So that fact is true. Yeah.
So we'll wrap up soon, but I would love to talk to you again, either midway through the season or after the season as well about this. A reminder, it is on Vice every Tuesday, 10 p.m. There's a lot of questions that people might not know how it works out, as to how Darkside or this series can use footage that is owned by WWE. Do you mind explaining that a little bit? Because I think that's something that from a general understanding point, a lot of people don't get.
Yeah, well, I mean, we work with lawyers and we work, within the parameters of fair use in order to use that footage. There's a lot of, there's no specific written in stone guidelines or rules. You have to just basically be able to frame, anything that you're saying, or sorry, anything you're showing appropriately, in terms of what you're illustrating. And so, I myself am not the lawyer that handles that. We have a legal team that handles that. But yeah, that's basically essentially what we are able to do with our shows. I mean, it's not much more complicated than that.
I love hearing about this. I look forward to hearing about it more. The first episode of this, again, I got a good look at, and you want to watch this documentary. The only ones that you have seen about WCW were quite literally written by the victors, and they were written by the victors in the Vince McMahon era, which is categorically different than even what we see now, much less than one outside. Evan, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, man, exactly. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super glad you liked it. Thank you again for watching it and liking it. I appreciate that. I'm very excited to see the reactions everybody has to it. But yeah, we just wanted to make this also a fun ride in terms of the show too. I mean, we have a lot of love for WCW, so you're going to see a lot of, shot on camcorder N64 footage that we put in there. Just that came from our souls. So I hope people also have a lot of fun with the nostalgia of '90s wrestling as well too. Thank you again.
Reminder, guys, starting June 4th on Vice, 10 p.m. Who Killed WCW? Until next time, we're out.